opportunities you create. You plus the action you take. You plus the future that's yours and yours alone. Host Plus, your industry super fund.
What's happening in property in 2015? How can you identify the areas with the greatest chance of growth? What do you need to do to ensure that you improve the bottom line of your property portfolio? In front of a live audience, I'll be joined by Dr. Andrew Wilson, Lisa Montgomery, Michael Pease, Ian Rodriguez and Brad Deere. And we'll be answering the questions that property investors most ask, setting you up for a great year of property investing. Be part of the audience at Crow's Nest on February the 28th, or watch this special edition on Sky News Business on Monday, March 9. For more information, go to yourpropertyteam.com.au/Sky.
The Prime Minister has pledged to tighten up visa and citizenship processes as he prepares to give a long-awaited national security address later this morning. Tony Abbott will put forward his case for tougher national security measures, saying that for too long Australia has given the benefit of the doubt to would-be extremists. He's already threatened to stop abuse of welfare by terror supporters, crack down on Islamic hate preachers and ban Islamist group Hizb ut-Tahrir. The Army is leading the Cyclone Marsha clean-up along the central Queensland coast as authorities race to put roofs over more than 100 families who've been unable to return to their homes since the Category 5 storm. 50,000 homes, including at Rockhampton and Yeppoon, remain without power. Parents are being asked to check before sending their children to school today, with many remaining closed as the clean-up effort continues. Gold Coast representative stars Greg Bird and Dave Taylor are among the latest players to be enveloped in the drug scandal that's rocked the NRL club. They're now among 6 current and past Titans players who've been named as part of an investigation into the supply of cocaine. They've all been given notices to appear in court next month in relation to supplying cocaine for personal use or on supplying cocaine to friends and colleagues between August and December of last year. Australia Post has forecast its first full-year loss in 30 years after a huge decline in the number of letters being sent. The company's reported a first-half profit after tax of $98 million. That's down 56% on the first-half result of last year. The Postal Service is now seeking government approval to change its regulations to better meet the needs of consumers. The red carpet's been rolled out for the biggest night in Hollywood. The Oscars are due to get underway soon in Los Angeles. There are just 2 Australians hoping to pick up Oscar glory: Tim Crosby for Best Visual Effects on X-Men Days of Future Past and sound mixer David Lee for Unbroken. Boyhood and Birdman are 2 major contenders for the Best Picture award. In sport, South Sydney are the World Club champions after thrashing English Super League side St Helens 39-0 this morning. And a look at the weather: humid with showers and thunderstorms over the north and the east, a cool change spreading over the south.
Live, this is AM Agenda with Kieran Gilbert.
Good morning and welcome to the program. The Prime Minister will today deliver a national security update here in Canberra. Now, there are some chilling findings in this review, including that thousands of leads and individuals are under investigation by our security agency, and some 400 are considered high priority, double of what ASIO was looking at a year ago. Coming up on the program this morning, Liberal frontbencher Paul Fletcher and Labor's Andrew Lee, also the Shadow Treasurer Chris Bowen. First though to the Minister for Justice, Michael Keenan, is here in the studio. Minister, thanks so much for your time.
My pleasure.
Let's start, I guess, with the encouraging news, and that is that overall this review has found the system, the coordination is actually working.
Well, our systems work very well in Australia. The agencies within the Commonwealth level cooperate in a way that I think is very unique and works very well. We coordinate very well with our state and territory colleagues, and we can see that the system works by things such as within the last fortnight we've actually had our agencies stop another terrorist attack from occurring occurring in Australia. So the Australian people should feel very confident that the systems we do have work and they are effective in keeping us safe, although of course that doesn't mean we have a foolproof system.
Like we saw in December of last year with Monash. So can you explain then for our viewers how we have this review finding that the systems are effective, as you point out, and yet we do have that individual fall through the cracks in terms of that attack in Sydney in December?
Well, that's right, and the report that we've commissioned into that incident does make for disturbing reading, because what it shows is that there was lots of individual decisions that were made about Man Monash that are defensible as an individual decision, but systemically the system gave him too much of the benefit of the doubt and was too generous in its interpretations of his motives. Now clearly we need to learn from that, and that was why the Prime Minister commissioned the review by the head of his department and by the head of the Premier's department in New South Wales, and that's why we've accepted all of the recommendations that that review has made to make sure that we're doing everything we can to ensure that an incident like that doesn't occur again.
And when we say the benefit of the doubt, the Prime Minister's referred to that phrase as well. In a national security sense, what does that mean?
Well, what it means is that we have very generous systems in Australia that interpret people's motives, I think, in probably a way that's given them too much leeway. We've done everything we can in terms of our law enforcement agencies and our intelligence community to secure Australia and to keep Australians safe. Now we want to make sure that all of our departments are heading in the right direction. Clearly we're looking at things like why Man Monash was able to come to Australia and gain citizenship, and we need to make sure that those processes are as tight as they can be, so we're not allowing people to come to Australia who might pose a threat to our national security. 400
cases seen as high priority by our security agencies. Can you give us a sense of why there's been such growth, doubling the number of high priority cases in a year? Is it because of the effectiveness of the online recruitment of IS and like-minded groups, or is it the fact that our surveillance is better?
Well, I mean, the security situation in Australia and internationally deteriorated very significantly last year because of events in the Middle East. Clearly, there's organisations there that have been effective in using social media in particular to recruit people to their way of thinking and to incite people to violence. So the threat is very different than it's been before, and it's more severe than it's been before. So this is unfortunately what has been occurring, and this is why we've got our security agencies looking at a larger range of people, and why we've resourced them to do that, because we want to make sure that if somebody is going to commit an act of violence in Australia, that our security and law enforcement agencies are up to the task of preventing that.
President Obama has a special envoy to deal with the rise of IS, and one of the focuses has been online, trying to counter that message. Do we put enough energy into that?
Well, the Attorney General in Washington announced last week that we'd be spending almost $18 million to specifically do that. We're also spending almost $13.5 million on a countering violent extremism program. So these are very important ways that we must negate the propaganda that people are receiving and make sure that people who might be vulnerable to receiving this propaganda and acting on it are given another way. And we are very focused on doing that, and with working in Australia with communities that might actually be vulnerable to that sort of propaganda being effective.
Now, in terms of the money spent, that's fine, but are our agencies equipped? Are they able to, in terms of spending the money, I guess, do they have the personnel? Do they have the infrastructure? Do they have the scope to deal with this worsening situation?
Well, we've spent a lot of time trying to get this right. I think we have the best law enforcement and intelligence agencies in the world, and they have been very effective in keeping us safe. So, look, we have been spending a lot of time making sure that the money that we're spending on countering violent extremism is going to be spent effectively to actually neutralise this threat. Now, there's no magic wand, if you like, but we need to do everything we can to make sure that communities are getting the right messages from their government, and that people within those communities that might be attracted to these violent and evil messages are given another way and another path.
So, is it possible to just shut down these sort of video messages or this online communication?
Well, the nature.
Can you undertake that sort of censorship?
Well, the nature of the online world, unfortunately, doesn't necessarily give us all of those options, but we need to make sure that there is alternative messages out there, that the sort of vicious and evil propaganda that might be inciting people to violence on the internet, although we might not be able to stop it from getting through, that there's other messages out there, and there's more positive ways that people can have a look at the international situation. That's what we're focused on doing. That's what we're spending our money on, and I do think that our agencies are up to that task.
Minister, thanks so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Nice to talk to you.
A quick break on AIM Agenda, back with Paul Fletcher and Andrew Lee.
Sergey, come in, Sergey. Are you there yet?
Yes, Mr. Alexander.
Our mission is to uncover why Australians still visit our website looking for good health insurance deals.
Okay.
With the health insurance rate rise, our goal is to find customers the best policy from a wide range of funds.
Please, buy health insurance from Compare the Market. Simple.
Incredible. Take care of them. Unlike most eye drops, Optrex Actimist is clinically proven to help fill in the gaps in the eye's natural protective moisture barrier, locking in moisture for up to 4 hours relief. Optrex. Bring your eyes to life.
Smart knows that short bursts of activity can be just as effective as long, tedious workouts. Simple is finding 4 minutes with our new innovative exercise plans. Enjoy the benefits of Smart Made Simple with the new Weight Watchers.
My Uncle Tom is the best. I love spending time with him. He lives in a really cool place in the city and drives an awesome new hold-on cruise, a red one. He has a turbo engine. You don't have to be in the car to start it. It looks so cool from the outside. One day Uncle Tom will let me in it. Let's go there.
I'm as happy as a clown. At Mortgage Choice, the only thing that matters to us is the home loan that's right for you. So we pay your broker the same rate, no matter which home loan you choose from our wide choice of lenders. So, to get expert advice to help you find the right deal at no cost to you, go to mortgagechoice.com.au. You'll be happy as. Because we're happy, happy as.
At NAB, we don't charge monthly account fees on our classic banking account, ever. That means more in your pocket and less fees. More give, less take. NAB.
Guess who just got 60 points on the Amy Safe Driver app, baby?
The current trends in the modelling suggest... Hey Mel, I was trying to...
Amy Comprehensive Car Insurance customers who earn 60 points on Amy Safe Driver app now receive roadside assist free on renewal.
This is AIM Agenda. With me now, the Shadow Assistant Treasurer, Andrew Lee, and the Parliamentary Secretary for Communications, Paul Fletcher. Paul Fletcher, first to you. Let's look at some other issues. I want to ask you about this suggestion by one of your colleagues, John Williams, that there be a Royal Commission into the financial system. This in the wake of the NAB controversy, following on from the Commonwealth Bank financial advice scandal as well. What's your thought on the prospect of a Royal Commission, Paul?
Well, good morning, Kieran. And the first thing to say is that if a major bank or financial institution has not been dealing with clients as it should, then it's appropriate that that institution properly review the matter and, where appropriate, provide recompense. And there is a responsibility, I think, on the major banks and financial institutions to always keep their operations under scrutiny. Now, on the specific question of whether there needs to be a Royal Commission, there is in fact a lot going on in terms of the provision of financial advice. The government has been carrying out a major review of the financial system, the Financial Services Inquiry. That's a 1 in 15-year inquiry. That's now with the government, and the government is considering the recommendations there, and we'll have more to say as the year goes on. There are also some actions that the government is taking in response to a parliamentary committee, some bipartisan recommendations. So, for example, we intend to have a comprehensive register of financial advisors in place by the end of March, and that will allow consumers to verify the qualifications and experience of the individual financial advisor that they are dealing with. Separately, ASIC is conducting its own preemptive detailed review into major financial services companies and banks. So there is a lot going on in the financial advice space. It is important that financial advisors live up to the highest standards. Of course, they have detailed standards they need to meet under the Future of Financial Advice legislation.
Well, given all that activity that Paul Fletcher's talking about, Andrew Lee, does that satisfy you that the government is taking this seriously? And I guess a further question to that is the NAB. Now, we've seen that the reports out of the AFR that they had privately compensated many of their customers. Is this, like Nick Xenophon says, victimising the victim once again, because many of these people who might have got dodgy advice don't know about it?
Well, Kieran, the evidence that seems to be coming out about what's happened at NAB, again now in the wake of Storm and Trio, where we've still got victims paying off the cost of bad financial advice, do highlight the need to get finance right. Finance is absolutely vital in a modern economy. It's how we manage to ensure that resources go to their most productive use and make sure that people starting a business can do so because they've got a great idea rather than a big inheritance. But since the coalition's got in, they've seemed to make every decision based on what's good for bankers rather than what's good for mums and dads. So we saw the Future of Financial Advice being attempted to be watered down by the government, stopped at the last minute by a coalition of senators, and I pay tribute to Sam Dastyari for his work in that. Because when you've got a government that's standing against choice, standing against national seniors, and which seems to be working just to ensure the excessive remuneration in one of our best remunerated sectors, then you've really got to worry.
So should there be a Royal Commission though? That's the question.
I think so, Kieran. Yeah, I think that it's time to lift the lid and have a look at exactly what's happening in this area. This is a government that seems happy to call Royal Commissions to settle political scores, but won't call a Royal Commission when it comes to systematically sorting out an industry which does seem to have a range of dubious practices.
But Mr Fletcher articulated a number of areas, from ASIC through to the government's own inquiry, looking into this area. Why not see what they come up with first, rather than waste more money on yet another Royal Commission?
Kieran, every time I've seen the government look at financial advice, they've been pushing towards a laissez-faire approach, which strips away consumer protections. We saw that with their attempt to repeal FOFA, and you just need to look at who was standing with them and who was standing against them. It's very clear that this is a government for the big end of town after a generation of rising inequality.
Paul Fletcher, your response to that?
Look, Andrew is completely mischaracterising our response to the Future of Financial Advice legislation. We largely supported that. We proposed some minor technical changes. Let me give one example. There was a set of requirements under FOFA for financial advisors to provide a statement each year to their clients. Now, of course, they're already providing statements in respect of each individual underlying product. This actually made it more difficult for independent financial advisors, and if the objective is to have independence, quite rightly on the part of financial advisors as a criterion, that measure seemed to be going in the opposite direction to the overall intent of future financial advice. But we very strongly support high quality financial advice, and we substantively supported the bulk of future financial advice.
Kieran, this is an area where we need stronger consumer protections, and that's why I'd support the work that Chris Bowen and Sam Dastyari have done, which has, I think, laid the groundwork for a Royal Commission. It's time for the government to act rather than simply push this issue off.
Let's look at the issue of superannuation. Paul Fletcher, the respected Australian businessman John Simon, from the founder of the Aussie Home Loans, he is saying that the government does need to rein in the tax concessions for people with healthy super nest eggs. This seems inevitable. The government's got to head in this direction. What sort of threshold would you look at to consider some change? Would it be $1 million, $2 million in super?
Kieran, let's go back to basics. We took a promise to the last election that there would be no unexpected adverse changes to superannuation. We did that because the previous government, the Rudd-Gillard-Rudd government, had made a whole series of changes, contradictory changes in many cases, to superannuation, greatly reducing confidence in the availability of that very important retirement savings vehicle. So we have made that commitment. Separately, we have a white paper on the tax system, a tax white paper that is work being undertaken this year. And if that produces recommendations that the government decides to take up on aspects of the tax system, any aspect of the tax system, including superannuation, we would then take recommendations, if we decided to proceed with them, to the next election. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. We've got a clear commitment, no unexpected adverse changes to superannuation. So important to maintain confidence in this important retirement savings vehicle.
So basically your answer is that they might want something, the business community, others, in terms of reform, you'll give them nothing. That was your answer on both of those fronts?
No, that's not my answer at all. My answer is we've got a clearly signalled, measured process to have a tax white paper that will be undergone, that will go through that process this year, a careful examination of the issues across the spectrum on tax issues, including superannuation. Should there be recommendations out of that process that the government decides to take up, we will then be in a position to take them to the next election.
Okay. Well, I guess the question is, Andrew Lee, and as I say, John Simon is a very well thought of businessman. The question, though, that a lot of people say in response, though, is won't high wealth individuals simply move their money elsewhere? Can't they just shift the money or put their money elsewhere as opposed to in super if the concessions are reduced?
Well, Kieran, from an economics point of view, the reason that we have superannuation tax concessions is twofold. Primarily, it's to ensure that people reduce the propensity of people to claim the pension, so that's a benefit to all of us. And then there's a modest benefit from having a larger pool of national savings. But I do think that as you're getting further and further up the distribution to people with 8-figure superannuation accounts, then you begin to ask whether the superannuation tax concessions at that level are appropriate. Since the government came to office, it's made an adverse change affecting the 3 million Australians earning less than $37,000 a year. It's raised their superannuation taxes. But then at the same time, they delivered a superannuation tax cut to those with more than $2 million in their superannuation account. The 16,000 Australians with the largest super balances got a bonus when the Abbott government came to office. Every turn you look, they're making decisions that would make the Sheriff of Nottingham happy, and this is yet another one of those.
But in terms of my question, if you have a lot of money and they rein in the concession, doesn't it make sense that people will just simply take the money elsewhere instead of then a super nest egg? Isn't that that's the reality?
There's limited evidence on superannuation crowd out. There's a couple of papers, discussion papers by the Reserve Bank that have looked into this issue. But then I suppose you have to ask what is the detriment to all Australians if those at the very top end of the spectrum are putting a little bit less in super. These are people who are never near claiming the age pension. And indeed, for those that I mentioned before, with more than 2 million in their super accounts, they're getting a tax break every year, which is bigger than the age pension itself. It's more government assistance than someone on the full rate.
Paul Fletcher, just quickly, your thoughts on that. I want to get, on the substantive issue of the concessions in this space. Every economist you speak to says this is the area. If you're looking for revenue, a big pool, Here it is.
Look, I just want to respond to what Andrew said about changes we'd made to super. We made a change that was very well flagged before the last election, and that was necessary because it was to be funded from the mining tax. The mining tax was completely failed to raise the revenue that was expected, and we have an imperative to balance the budget because we've been left with cumulative budget deficits of over $200 billion. But that was very well flagged before the last election. I just come back to the point. We have a careful, comprehensive policy process, a tax white paper looking at a range of tax issues, and of course superannuation falls within the tax system, and so that is the process under which any of these issues can be considered. But before we acted upon any recommendation, we would take that to the election.
Paul Fletcher, to another story. This is the front of the Australian today, and the headline, "The Ladies Not for Turning, Credlin vows to stay put." A number of your colleagues have been privately critical of Peter Credlin and her approach. Is this the news that they were after, essentially, in the wake of that non-leadership spill a couple of weeks ago?
Oh, Kieran, look, I'd simply say it's a matter for the Prime Minister as to the employment of his staff, including his Chief of Staff, and beyond that I'm not going to get into commenting on unsourced stories.
A lot of your colleagues in the Liberal Party have and made their position well known. Is this a situation where the Prime Minister needs to show he's listening, Paul Fletcher, in the way that his office works?
Well, if you want to get a comment from my colleagues who've commented, you know how to get them.
All right, Andrew Lee, in terms of the Iraq story at the weekend, the Prime Minister said there were no formal consultations had on that issue of the report that he considered sending more than 3,000 troops in a combat role to Iraq. Greg Sheridan writes this morning and says that what people say in private is entirely different to what is formally considered, and the CDF, among other top brass, have said they had no idea of any such proposal. So if it was made, clearly it didn't get to the very top of the military through the CDF and the heads of the forces by the looks of it.
Well, Kieran, I'm not privy to what's going on at that level of Tony Abbott's government, but it would seem to be yet another sign that Mr Abbott's judgment is waning, that he is making decisions which seem to again not be carefully thought through based on the best available evidence. And let's face it, it's just a bit over a decade ago that another coalition government took us into Iraq, into a conflict which I think most sensible commentators now look back on and say was a bad call by Australia to become engaged in. And for Mr Abbott apparently not to have learned the lessons of the 2003 intervention is concerning to me.
Paul Fletcher, finally to you on that story.
Well, look, there was an unsourced story in The Australian. The Prime Minister on the record has described the claims as false and fanciful. But can I just pick up the comment that Greg Sheridan made this morning? In a decision-making process, it is important that you look at all possibilities. Now, I wasn't there. I don't know what was proposed or what wasn't. But if you look at the classic studies of decision-making in organisations, you look at situations like the Cuban Missile Crisis, President Kennedy made sure all points of view were considered in a collaborative decision-making process. So as to the specific allegation, it's been denied on the record by the Prime Minister. That I know who I believe. I'll believe that over an unsourced story any day. But I do make the more general point, in a decision-making process, it is important to look at a range of options, and there are many options that get put up that ultimately don't get proceeded with, but you do need to have some creative and flexible thinking as you generate your options.
Well, OK, Paul Fletcher.
Tony Abbott may be many things. He's not President Kennedy.
Andrew Lee, Paul Fletcher, we're out of time. We'll see you next time. A quick break, back in just a moment.
Welcome to Parliament Diary. The standing orders provide the sitting times for the House, so today we sit at 10 a.m. Government business includes a statement by the Prime Minister on national security and consideration of the Senate amendments to the Environment Legislation Amendment Bill, which has passed the House. Should the House agree to these amendments, the final legislation will result in stronger protection for turtles and dugong from illegal poaching and trading, with penalties tripling for killing or injuring threatened species. The legislation does not, however, impact on native title holders' rights. Question time at 2 p.m. Good viewing.
a day. Welcome to Hello. Unlimited broadband, no lock-in contracts from $48 a month. That's unlimited broadband, no lock-in contracts from $48 a month. Call us or visit hello.com.au. Terms and conditions apply.
We all know Jim's mowing, but did you know Jim's also offers heaps of other services?
Need it done, Jim's the one.
Whatever you need doing, cleaning or fixing around your home or business, Jim's has a service to get the job done. We're the Jim's Group, the name Australians trust.
Need it done, Jim's the one.
For all Jim's services, see our website.
Need it done, Jim's the one.
Call for a free quote or book online.
Save every day at Coles.
Coles brand olive oil spread 500 grams is down to just $2.
Every day.
Naturally cholesterol free and down to just $2 every day.
Save every day at Coles.
Honey, I'm hooked on you. I'm all shook up, it only took a minute or two.
Introducing the all-new turbocharged Sonata Premium.
I'm hooked on you.
We see pluses. Home, health, wealth, all pluses. Friends, family, love. There's another big plus in the world. You plus the opportunities you create. You plus the action you take. You plus the future that's yours and yours alone. Host Plus, your industry super fund.
Focus on just how much damage has been done is incredibly apparent.
Enormous damage to vegetation and of course to buildings. The trees just pulverised. Enormous rainfall, it's unthinkable for southern Queensland.
Delivering unrivaled live coverage. This is Sky News Live, Australia's news channel. Live. This is AM Agenda with Kieran Gilbert.
It's 9 in Canberra, 6 in Perth. Kieran Gilbert here. These are our top stories this Monday morning. The Prime Minister prepares for his speech on national security, in which he's expected to appoint a new counter-terrorism chief. Hundreds of soldiers joined clean-up efforts along the central Queensland coast in the wake of Cyclone Marsha. The lawyer representing 4 Gold Coast NRL players implicated in a drug scandal says his clients do not have a case to answer. The Sky weather forecast, humid with showers and thunderstorms over the north and east. A cool change spreading over the south. The Prime Minister will deliver a national security update at 11 o'clock here in Canberra.